Welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, your GM, and we are going to sit here and we're talk about games that we love. That's what the show is about. It's talking about things that we love about gaming, ways to be better game masters, better players. We do game reviews. We do discussion about setting, design, creation, all of these different things. And that is where we are at today. Today we're talking about a topic very close to my heart. Um, It was sort of the inspiration for Jackals. It was the thing that set me on the path kind of to where I am today. And that is a discussion of the mythic and the mundane in gaming. Now, we live in a post Enlightenment world, so that myth has been redefined as something that is not true. But before the Enlightenment, typically where all of our games take place, myth had a different meaning. Myth was the answer to the question, not how does it work, but what is true about the world. Hey, Professor, thank you for the subscription and thank you for considering the work good. I appreciate that. We can't do this without fans like the Professor, all of the people who subscribe, all of the generosity of people who gift subscriptions like Rook, and to our patrons who support us over at patreon.com/iconiproduction. All right, enough with that. So it tells us what is true about the world. That's the thing we got to remember, is that myths never meant scientific reason. They weren't trying to explain how the world worked. They were trying to understand what was fundamentally true about the world. So when we talk about in the modern day how, oh, well, they just, they didn't know what thunder was or the process of lightning and thunder, so they created Thor. That is an incredibly egotistical and anachronistic view of the past. We're playing games in most games, right? Either in the far future or in the far past. Most of us play a Fantasy 20 game, whether that's Pathfinder, the OSR, OSE, DCC, all of the three-letter acronyms, and of course, Dungeons and Dragons, in whatever version that you play it in. And so often, our wonder falls short, in my opinion, because we are concerned with how things work as opposed to what truth do they tell. Even our way we look at magic in Fantasy 20 games is far more of a Western post-Enlightenment scientific view of magic than an actual medieval view of magic or antiquity, early or late, or even Bronze Age, right? We look at the spell list and we see, all right, well, if I use these verbal components and I use an amber rod and a rabbit's fur, for those of you who have played the game long enough, you know that when you say the words, you use the material components, and you do the semantic gestures, you produce a lightning bolt. That is science by a different name. That isn't mythic. That isn't wondrous. I would say even RuneQuest, my favorite game steeped in mythology, while the magic systems connect to the world deeply, because we're playing a game, some of that wonder goes away. Spirit magic is the magic of excellence. Yes, there are some magical effects, but it really is just about how to make your blade sharper, be more skillful in what you're doing, how to bind a wound to make sure that it heals right by invoking the spirits. Or tied to the gods with rune magic. Or, very impersonally, the interaction between the runes and sorcery. I was inspired by this by a series of articles by Andrew Montgomery, who wrote the 6th season in Sartar series on the Johnstown Compendium, which I linked to in our Exploring Glorantha video, and I'll link to these here as well. I would say the closest game two games that hit Magic in a way that feels right to me is that I did not write, because right, as a designer, I write Magic systems that feel right to me. Blackbirds, because I will just continue to talk about Blackbirds till the day I die. It was the game that I actually got to run for the first time last night, and it was sufficiently weird and creepy. Blackbird's magic is all about dealing with spirits. If your spell goes off correctly, if your vitiation is successful, you incur a debt to the spirit that you are working with. The tithe goes up. The greater the tithe, the more you owe. Sometimes you can offer to do things for the spirit to lower your tithe. Sometimes your tithe goes up too much and you are forced to do things for the spirits. That is a look at how magic worked in the minds of the medieval time. Right? Magic used to mean the dealing with spirits, not the logical outflow of certain gestures, words, and items. The other one that works fantastically is Dungeon Crawl Classics. And the reason that this works is that every time you cast a spell in DCC, you as the player character do not know what the effect is going to be. If you have not seen a DCC spell sheet, you have a large, each spell is one page. When you go to cast it, you make a casting roll. So the Hold Portal spell, it could bar the door for a minute. It could bar the door for an hour. It could, if you roll really well, remove the door completely for a week. You channeled too much energy accidentally. There are stories of people who ate the wizard in the dungeon because the Hold Portal spell went so well that the door disappeared and they found themselves trapped in a sealed room for a week. They ran out of rations, and well, what better way to deliver some poetic justice to the wizard? Yes, Padre, I tried to do that in Fading Suns, especially when it came to deals with the devil or demons or the creatures between voids. I am a fan of seeing what someone was willing to trade for what they think they want. In my games, there is a place in certain games that I run that are connected to certain places in my head. I can't explain it better than that. Jackals is a sealed world. It never connects to the Thousand Halls or the Tower in Crucible. It just never has. Blackbirds as well. But Tanar and the Cypher games that I run and the Hero games that I run and all these other games are definitely connected to this construct in my head and how all the different worlds relate. And in those worlds, there is a place that will come up at random points in the game. I'll be honest, I don't even know that I ever planned for the Black Lantern to show up. It just shows up whenever it feels like. And inevitably, the players at the table, the rules are explained to them. You only ever get to enter the Black Lantern once. Not just once a campaign, but once a character. Some people have never even had the opportunity as a person to have a character enter the Black Lantern more than once. And inside is a beautiful little shop, like a waiting room on a shop. And there was there's always a curator who comes out and explains the rules. You get to ask for your heart's desire. Anything you want. Anything you want is on the table. But the price is determined after the request. And you have one chance. You can take as long as you want to think, but you have only one chance to say yes or no. You say no, you find yourself out on the street and will never find the Black Lantern again. If you say yes, you are bound to the results of the agreement. What you want will come about, maybe not in the way you wanted it, which is always wise to word your questions and your requests carefully with both demons, devils, and the Black Lantern, and any good DM. You are bound to pay the price. Sometimes the price is instantly. Sometimes the price is nebulous. What does it mean when a character gives up half their remaining life? Well, it sits like the sort of Damocles over their head, knowing that one day the GM will come to them at the start of the session and say, this is it. This is your last day. You've woken up. You know you will die today as payment for the price of what you've gained. It's always interesting to me to watch that go off. That moment in a player's head when they realize the price, was it worth it? Because in the moment it always feels worth it, right? This is the most important thing I have to deal with. But when the price comes due. So I love this. I'm a fan of Faustus. I love the Christopher Marlowe play, but for me, it's the story of Goethe, his Faustus, that really sings to me. I love, as Padre brought up, the stories of the Fae in the Celtic myths and legends. The fact that I think Robert Jordan taps into this when he talks about the Aes Sedai, that the Aes Sedai will never lie. But the truth you hear may not be the truth that you interpret, something along those lines. And yes, I think that is something great about Orosh. I feel like that's something that really can come through in Orosh. Professor says the trouble for me is trying to play a character that would accept the terms if I would not, as a player, accept the terms. And see, that's the thing. That is the thing. When you get in these situations, the line between player and person and character tends to blur a little bit. And I think that's where we get this mythic, magical, wondrous resonance. Because in that moment, you as the person are saying one thing, and you as the character are saying one thing. And that tends to overlap in these moments when you are trying to create a mythic resonance. It's when to use Greg Stafford's term, it's when the player steps into the god time that the myth becomes real for them. I've had moments in the game where the mythic moments for me are those moments where the player on the couch knows that they're in a bad situation. They know that something is not the way it's supposed to be. And yet their character is so outraged by what is going on that they are rolling for attack before they even truly realize what is going on. We live in the mundane world. Gaming is one of those things that allows us to escape and step into something mythic. We did our episode on the God Time, which will go live later this week on YouTube, but we talk about this. The God Time is both less real than reality and somehow more important. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm going to quote Tolkien here, I'm not saying that escape is the escape of a deserter from the front line. I do think that gaming, like any hobby, if we use it to we use it to run from the problems of real life, if we use it to run from our responsibilities, that's a dangerous thing. But if we use it as the escape of a prisoner looking out the window and dreaming of something better, That's where gaming becomes mythic for us. It allows us to step out of the mundane, step into something magical. You may notice that some of the episodes leading up to episode 100, I'm going to kind of try and lay the foundation for our discussion of beauty. Rook is here. Rook, I love that you have brought chips and dips and the blood of your enemies. I hope it is in a chalice of blood, the only approved container of Iconic for holding blood. And let's see here. John said, I'm not sure I'm watching the right one. Faust wasn't a musical. I don't know. I got to be honest. I think a musical version of Faust would, with the right people, maybe like I can't even cast that. Now I'm going to be thinking about this for the rest of the day. What would be the best musical? Who would be the two leads? Who would be the best Mephistopheles and Faust for the very German-inspired Faust the musical? Well, we're going to push that fan casting to Iconic. Gaming is more like therapy than an escape for me. I mean, that I have had moments where after a session, I have talked with players and they were like, yeah, I was working through something. Especially in mage games. That's why I always counsel people in World of Darkness games. Don't play someone too close to yourself. Especially in mage, where my job is to challenge the beliefs of the characters. Because much like Homer Simpson, I really enjoy playing Devil's Advocate. It's a great pinball game. You're not allowed to watch streams anymore. I had a couple of errors with Twitch as well. I hope that smooths out for you. Man, Phantom, Repo the Genetic Opera with Anthony Stewart Head and Sarah Brightman is one of my favorite musicals. It is such a bizarrely perfect opera, like rock opera, start to finish. The chorus, the arc of the characters. Anthony Stewart Head just slays in everything that he does. Yeah, let me make sure. Kristen Chenoweth. Wow. All right. I could get behind that for Mephistopheles. And let's be honest, Hugh Jackman in basically any musical is sort of just what I want to see him in. Starting with Les Mis and moving on from there. So my question for you is, how can you make your games this week a little bit more mythic? L5R has a great rule when it comes to magic. There's a story in L5R, Legend of the Five Rings, a samurai focused Japanese inspired in the way by way of Kurosawa magical setting. Love Legend of the Five Rings. There's a story of when the Shadowlands first invaded the Empire, and the Crabs, which is one of the clans, they are stalwart defenders of the Empire. They are fighting a losing retreat as they flee from the not the Hida lands. What were the scouts' name? Anyway, one of the family's lands is being overrun by the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands are basically what festers around the festering pit, aptly named, which heads all the way into hell and the underworld. So the land is slowly being corrupted. So there's this army of Oni that are heading north. And they're going to just invade the Empire. And the Hida, the builders, the head of the clan, they come up with this plan. They can build a wall that will keep out the Shadowlands, but they need time. And this young Shugenja, Shugenjas are priests in L5R. They talk with the spirits, they cast spells, elemental magic. This young Shugenja is like, I can buy you the time that you need. And she raises the river into a wall. that keeps the Shadowlands at bay long enough for the crab to construct an actual wall for the army of the Shadowlands to break themselves against. Which is awesome. It cost the Shugenja her life. And so L5R has this great rule. Here's how magic works. Unless your character is willing to give up their life. In that case, give them whatever they want. Just kill them at the end. We need more rules like that. We need more like explicit rules, because let's be honest, as GMs, as DMs, we do that stuff all the time. I have one player, Padre knows him, Calvin. Usually when things are direst, Calvin comes to me and is like, I want this to happen and I'm willing to die for it. What will you give me? Man, the sun, the moon, and stars, Calvin, like, how do you want this to go down? Because anytime someone's so invested in a game that they want their character to die to ensure the game moves on, I'm willing to move heaven and earth for them. Padre, exactly. The martyr card. Well, John, I'm glad that you can at least hear me, and I do hope that the Twitch stream has frozen on a heroic or mythic pose for me, and not a memeable one. So, that brings us to the end of today's discussion. The mythic and the mundane. We live with the mundane. Why not embrace the mythic? And by that I mean any of these times where the player and the character collapse into one, and what the player wants and what the character wants is something they're willing to sacrifice nearly anything for. Because when you look at it, most of our myths, Greek myths, Babylonian, the tales of Arthur, the tales of Roland, the tales of heroic defenses in World War I and World War II, the stories that inspire us that come up on the news or in our feeds. Sadly, most of them are intricately tied to the idea of sacrifice. The movies that stay with us, the hero who gives up their life, gives up their reputation, or gives up that one thing that they love most, those resonate with us. So I feel like that was a worthwhile discussion on how to leave one way to embrace the mythic in our games. I'm not talking about heroic. I'm not talking about high fantastical. I'm talking about the mythic. The moment where the player wants to give up something valuable for themselves so that the rest of the group can go on. Pretty sure Tolkien would have something to say about the silver myth here, but I will leave it at that. Let's see here. Padre said, you had a choice in the Relics of Redux. Great adventure. Martyr to win, or make a very difficult roll. You did draw 4 supporters, which helped. All right. Well, there you go. All right, everyone. We will be back tonight with the second half of our Deadlands game, Something Wicked. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to start with a chase and hopefully end with a duel. Really want to show off a ton of the cool mechanics in Savage Worlds and make sure I'm comfortable with them for when we go to Crucible. I did have a chance to sit down with half the players, and we got some great character designs for the Crucible game. I'm very excited about it. I'm creating some new magic systems. I'm creating some new gods, edges, and hindrances, as well as a new species. So I'm looking forward to starting that toward the end of March. But this week is Deadlands, and next week we start our Pan-Pacifica to show off the new books that are coming out from Ulysses. Pan-Pacifica is the cyberpunk noir setting of Torg. right? Cyberpunk comes in kind of three flavors, if you will, in Torg, kind of taking each of the different components and really kind of splitting it up. The body horror of removing parts of your body and replacing it with cybernetics, that's Tharcold. The shiny chrome digital future for Cyberpunk is, of course, the Cyber Papacy. But the Johnny Mnemonic noir, street samurai and it's always raining, neon lights up ahead, mega corporations plotting behind your back version of Cyberpunk. That's Pan Pacifica. We're going to run a 2-3 episode introduction to Pan Pacifica using the new archetypes, using the new books. We'll post links in the notes for that. I feel like I had something else I wanted to announce. It'll come to me probably 10-15 minutes after the stream, and I'll put it in the show notes. Something about Cyberpunk. It's gone. So, I hope to see you all tonight for our Deadlands adventure. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I have also started, I'm part of the host of a Torg podcast with Lehman, who is the line developer for Torg Eternity. I'll post a link to that playlist. It's on the Ulysses International channel. I'll post it here under the show notes. If you want to go check out more Torg, hear me talk about Torg. At this point, I'm making like every other episode. I think they talked about Orosh last time, and I'll be on this Saturday. They're trying to do it once a week. I'm trying to make them as often as I can, but I love Torg and I love talking about it. So hopefully we'll see some more Torg podcasts going forward. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I am JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and this is an Iconic production. I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one.